Discover the keys to emotional healing, a gentle guide to releasing pain and rebuilding inner peace. Introduction: a safe harbor for your heart. Take a moment to breathe. Right now, wherever you are, whatever brought you to this moment of seeking healing, know that you are exactly where you need to be. If you're listening to these words, something in your heart is calling for attention. Perhaps it's the weight of a relationship that ended, the echo of words that cut too deep, or the quiet ache of dreams that didn't unfold as you'd hoped. Maybe it's the accumulated heaviness of small disappointments, the burden of perfectionism, or the shadow of experiences from long ago that still whisper in the corners of your mind. You are not broken. You are not too much, too little, or too late. You are a human being who has lived, loved, hoped, and sometimes been hurt in the process. And that makes you courageous, not weak. This audiobook is an invitation not to fix yourself, because you don't need fixing but to rediscover the gentle art of tending to your own heart. Think of it as returning home to yourself after a long journey through difficult terrain. Here, we'll explore how to create a sanctuary within yourself, a place where your emotions can be felt, honored, and ultimately transformed. The path of emotional healing isn't about erasing your past or pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about learning to dance with your emotions rather than being overwhelmed by them. It's about discovering that your sensitivity is not a weakness, but a superpower, and that your capacity to feel deeply is the same capacity that allows you to love deeply, create beautifully, and connect authentically. As we journey together through these pages, imagine that you're sitting with a dear friend who understands that healing isn't linear, that setbacks are part of the process, and that the goal isn't to become invulnerable, it's to become whole. Let these words wash over you like a gentle stream, carrying away what no longer serves you and nourishing what wants to grow. Your healing matters. Your peace matters. You matter. Chapter 1: Understanding Emotional Pain. The language of the heart. Emotional pain speaks in a language that our minds often struggle to understand. It arrives as a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, a heaviness in the shoulders, or a fog that clouds our thinking. Unlike physical pain, which we can usually pinpoint and treat with relative precision, emotional pain can feel elusive, overwhelming, and strangely persistent. But here's what I want you to know. Emotional pain is not your enemy. It's your internal guidance system, alerting you to something that needs your attention. Just as physical pain warns us when our body needs care, emotional pain signals that our heart, our sense of safety, or our core beliefs about ourselves and the world have been impacted. When we understand this, we can begin to shift our relationship with difficult emotions. Instead of asking, "Why me?" or "When will this end?" we can begin to ask, "What is this pain trying to tell me?" And "How can I respond to myself with the same compassion I'd show a dear friend?" How pain lives in the body. Our bodies are remarkably honest. They hold our stories, our unexpressed emotions, and our unprocessed experiences in their tissues, their posture, and their patterns of tension. When we experience emotional trauma, whether it's a sudden shock like betrayal or loss, or the slow accumulation of stress and overwhelm, a nervous system responds by trying to protect us. Sometimes this protection looks like hypervigilance, where we're constantly scanning for threats. Other times it manifests as numbness, where we disconnect from our feelings to avoid being overwhelmed. Both responses are intelligent adaptations to difficult circumstances, but they can become problematic when they persist long after the original threat has passed. You might notice that certain emotions create predictable sensations in your body. Anxiety might manifest as a racing heart and shallow breathing. Sadness might feel like a heavy weight in your chest. Anger might create heat and tension in your jaw or shoulders. These aren't coincidences, they're your body's way of processing and expressing what your heart is experiencing. Learning to tune into these body signals is like learning to read an internal weather report. When you notice the storm clouds gathering, perhaps tension building in your neck or a familiar flutter of anxiety in your stomach, you can respond with care before the storm reaches full intensity. The myths we believe about being strong. Our culture often equates emotional strength with stoicism, resilience with never showing vulnerability, and healing with getting over it quickly. These myths can be particularly damaging because they shame us for the very process that leads to genuine healing. Let's examine some of these myths. Myth: strong people don't cry. Truth: tears are a natural and healthy way to release emotional tension. They actually contain stress hormones, making crying a literal cleansing process. The strongest people often cry freely because they understand that tears are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of being fully human. Myth: you should be able to handle everything on your own. Truth: humans are wired for connection and support. Seeking help, whether from friends, family, or professionals, is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. Even the most resilient people have support systems they lean on. Myth: healing happens quickly if you're doing it right. Truth: emotional healing unfolds on its own timeline, which rarely aligns with our desire for quick fixes. Real healing often involves cycles of progress and regression, breakthrough and integration. This isn't a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're human. Myth: you shouldn't burden others with your problems. Truth: sharing our struggles with trusted people doesn't make us burdensome, it makes us relatable, authentic, and often provides others with permission to be real about their own challenges. Perhaps the most damaging myth is that emotional pain is somehow optional, or that we should be able to think our way out of it. This misconception leads to self-criticism when we can't simply decide to feel better. The truth is that healing often requires us to feel our way through our emotions, not think our way around them. The wisdom of emotional seasons. Just as nature moves through seasons, periods of growth, harvest, dormancy, and renewal, our emotional lives have their own natural rhythms. Sometimes we're in a spring season, full of hope and new possibilities. Other times we're in winter, which can feel barren and difficult, but is actually a time of deep rest and inner preparation. Understanding this seasonal nature of emotional life can help us be more patient with ourselves during difficult periods. Winter season's times of grief, depression, or major life transitions aren't signs that we're failing. They're necessary parts of the cycle that allow for the deep work of transformation to occur. During these winter seasons, the work isn't to force spring to come early. It's to tend to ourselves with the same care we'd give a plant during its dormant period, providing just enough light, water, and warmth to sustain life, while allowing the underground work of healing to happen naturally. Creating safety for your emotions. One of the most important steps in emotional healing is creating internal safety, a sense that all of your emotions are welcome, even the uncomfortable ones. This doesn't mean acting on every emotion or letting feelings dictate your behavior. It means creating space for emotions to exist without judgment, knowing that feelings are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. Think of your emotional world like a house. For too long, you might have kept certain rooms locked: the room where sadness lives, the room where anger resides, the room where fear has set up camp. Healing involves gently opening these doors, not to be overwhelmed by what's inside, but to bring light and air to spaces that have been neglected. When you create safety for your emotions, you're essentially becoming a loving parent to your inner world. You're saying, it's okay to feel scared, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel sad. You don't have to hide these parts of yourself from me. This internal safety becomes the foundation for all other healing work. When you trust that you can handle whatever emotions arise, you become less afraid of them. When you're less afraid of your emotions, you can begin to learn from them instead of being controlled by them. Chapter 2. Naming the wound. The power of naming. There's something almost magical that happens when we find the right words for our pain. Like a spell being broken, naming our wounds accurately can transform them from overwhelming, shapeless masses of hurt into something we can understand, work with, and eventually heal. In many spiritual traditions, naming is considered an act of power. When we name something, we establish a relationship with it. We move from being at the mercy of our pain to being in conscious dialogue with it. This doesn't minimize the pain, it transforms our relationship to it. Consider how different it feels to say, "I'm having a hard time," versus "I'm grieving the loss of who I thought I was becoming," or "I'm angry at myself for not speaking up when I knew something was wrong." The more specific we can be about our emotional experience, the more precisely we can respond to what we actually need. The archaeology of pain. Most emotional wounds have layers, like archaeological sites, where different periods of history are stacked upon each other. What feels like a fresh hurt might actually be touching something much older, something that's been waiting for attention for months or even years. For instance, the pain of a recent rejection might awaken the little child within you who felt invisible in their family. The frustration of a work situation might connect to deeper feelings of inadequacy that have been with you since childhood. The grief of an ended relationship might tap into existential loneliness that goes far beyond this one person. This layering is why some emotions feel disproportionately intense. When we understand that we're not just dealing with the current situation, but potentially with an accumulation of similar wounds, we can respond with more compassion and less judgment. Begin to notice when your emotional response feels bigger than the situation seems to warrant. This is often a signal that you're touching something deeper, something that predates the current trigger. Instead of dismissing these reactions as overreacting, try to get curious about what older wound might be asking for attention. The stories we tell ourselves. Every emotional wound comes with a narrative, a story we tell ourselves about what happened, what it means about us, and what it means about the world. These stories are powerful because they shape not just how we understand our past, but how we approach our future. Some common wound stories include, "I'm not lovable enough." This story often emerges from experiences of rejection, abandonment, or conditional love. It can manifest as people-pleasing, fear of intimacy, or a constant need for external validation. "I'm not safe in the world." This narrative might develop from experiences of betrayal, abuse, or repeated disappointments. It can lead to hypervigilance, difficulty trusting others, or a tendency to isolate. "I'm not capable enough." This story often stems from experiences of failure, criticism, or being made to feel incompetent. It can manifest as perfectionism, procrastination, or a reluctance to try new things. "I don't matter." This narrative might emerge from experiences of being ignored, dismissed, or treated as invisible. It can lead to difficulty asserting needs, chronic self-sacrifice, or a sense of meaninglessness. The important thing to understand is that these stories, while understandable responses to real experiences, are not ultimate truths about who you are. They're interpretations, and interpretations can be examined, challenged, and rewritten. The unspoken emotions. Sometimes, our deepest wounds are connected to emotions we've never fully acknowledged, let alone expressed. These unspoken emotions can be particularly powerful because they operate in the shadows, influencing our behavior and relationships in ways we don't fully understand. Common unspoken emotions include anger at people we're supposed to love. It can be difficult to acknowledge anger toward parents, partners, or friends, especially when we also love them. This unexpressed anger can manifest as depression, passive aggressiveness, or chronic resentment. Grief for lives unlived. We might carry unexpressed grief for the paths we didn't take, the dreams we abandoned, or the person we might have been under different circumstances. This grief can masquerade as regret, envy, or a sense of life passing us by. Fear of our own power. Sometimes we're afraid not of our weakness, but of our strength. We might fear that if we fully embraced our capabilities, we'd have to leave behind relationships or situations that feel safe, even if they're limiting. Shame about our needs. Many of us carry shame about basic human needs, the need for attention, affection, validation, or support. This shame can lead to a pattern of neglecting our own needs or feeling guilty when we do attend to them. Loneliness in relationships. It's possible to feel profoundly lonely even when surrounded by people. This loneliness often stems from not feeling truly seen or understood, but it can be difficult to name because it challenges our assumptions about what relationships should provide. The difference between pain and suffering. As we learn to name our wounds, it's helpful to understand the distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens to us, the inevitable hurts that come with being human. Suffering is what we add to pain through our resistance, our stories, and our attempts to avoid or control our experience. Pain says, "This hurts." Suffering says, "This shouldn't be happening. I can't handle this." Or, "This means I'm broken." Pain is temporary and specific. Suffering becomes chronic and pervasive when we fight against what is, when we shame ourselves for feeling what we feel, or when we catastrophize about what our current experience means about our future. Understanding this distinction is liberating because, while we can't always control the pain that comes into our lives, we do have some choice about how much additional suffering we create through our resistance and interpretation. Witnessing your own story. One of the most powerful practices in emotional healing is learning to witness your own story with compassion rather than judgment. This means developing the ability to observe your experiences, emotions, and patterns without immediately jumping to conclusions about what they mean or what you should do about them. Imagine you're sitting with a dear friend who's sharing their deepest pain with you. Notice how naturally you might listen with empathy, ask gentle questions, and offer comfort without trying to fix or minimize their experience. This is the quality of attention you can learn to bring to your own emotional world. As you practice witnessing your story, you might notice that certain themes or patterns emerge. Perhaps you have a pattern of attracting relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable. Maybe you consistently doubt your abilities even when evidence suggests you're competent. Or perhaps you struggle with setting boundaries in situations where you feel needed. These patterns aren't character flaws to be eliminated. They're intelligent strategies that once served you, but may no longer be helpful. By witnessing them with curiosity rather than criticism, you create space for new choices to emerge. The gift of tears. Tears are often the first language our emotions speak when we create space for them to be heard. They can be tears of sadness, anger, frustration, relief, or even joy. Each type of tear carries its own medicine, its own form of release and healing. Many people, particularly those who learned early that tears were unwelcome or unsafe, might find it difficult to cry even when they want to. If this resonates with you, know that the capacity to cry can be rekindled with patience and practice. Sometimes tears come not as a flood, but as a gentle rain, bringing relief and nourishment to emotional ground that has been too dry for too long. Other times they come as a storm, intense and overwhelming, but ultimately cleansing. If you find yourself crying as you work through this process of naming your wounds, receive those tears as a gift. They're not a sign that you're falling apart, they're a sign that you're courageously letting down the walls that have kept you separate from your own heart. Chapter 3. Holding space for yourself. The art of emotional presence. Learning to hold space for yourself is perhaps one of the most radical acts of self-love you can practice. In a world that constantly demands productivity, improvement, and forward motion, simply being present with what is without trying to change, it can feel revolutionary. Holding space for yourself means creating a container of loving awareness where all parts of your experience can exist without judgment. It's like being a compassionate witness to your own inner world, offering the same quality of presence you might give to a beloved friend in distress. This doesn't mean wallowing in difficult emotions or becoming self-indulgent. It means creating enough spaciousness in your awareness that you can be with your experience without being overwhelmed by it. It's the difference between being caught in the storm and finding shelter where you can watch the storm pass. The paradox of acceptance. One of the most challenging aspects of emotional healing is understanding that acceptance doesn't mean resignation. When we're in pain, the idea of accepting that pain can feel like giving up, like consigning ourselves to permanent suffering. But acceptance is actually the opposite of giving up. It's the first step toward genuine transformation. When we resist our emotions, we create a kind of internal war. Part of us is feeling something, and another part is fighting against that feeling. This internal conflict often causes more suffering than the original emotion itself. It's like trying to push a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more forcefully it springs back up. Acceptance means acknowledging what is actually happening in your inner world without adding layers of judgment, resistance, or premature attempts to change it. It's saying, yes, I'm feeling sad right now, instead of I shouldn't be feeling sad, or I need to stop feeling sad immediately. This kind of acceptance creates space for emotions to move through their natural cycle. Emotions are like weather patterns. They arise, peak, and eventually pass. But when we fight against them, we often prolong their stay and intensify their impact. The wisdom of pause. In our fast-paced world, we've become accustomed to immediate responses and quick solutions. But emotional healing often requires the wisdom of pause, the ability to slow down and create space between stimulus and response. When you're triggered by something, whether it's a criticism, a disappointment, or a memory that suddenly surfaces, your first instinct might be to react immediately. You might want to defend yourself, withdraw, or somehow make the uncomfortable feeling go away as quickly as possible. The practice of pause invites you to take a breath before reacting. In that breath, you can ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? What does this feeling need from me? How can I respond from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity? This pause doesn't have to be long. Sometimes just a few seconds of conscious breathing can create enough space for wisdom to emerge. The more you practice this, the more you'll find that you have choices in how you respond to difficult emotions, rather than being at their mercy. Breathing as an anchor. Your breath is always available to you as an anchor to the present moment. When emotions feel overwhelming, when thoughts are racing, or when you feel disconnected from yourself, your breath can guide you back to center. But breathing for emotional healing is different from breathing for relaxation. Instead of trying to breathe away your emotions, you're breathing with them, creating space for them to exist while maintaining your own stability. Try this. When you notice a difficult emotion arising, place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, feeling your belly rise. As you exhale slowly through your mouth, imagine you're breathing space around the emotion rather than trying to breathe it away. You might say to yourself, I'm breathing with my sadness, or I'm breathing space around my anger. This practice acknowledges the emotion while maintaining your own ground, like a mountain that remains stable while weather passes over it. The body as sanctuary. Your body is not just a vessel for your emotions. It's a sanctuary where healing can occur. When you're holding space for difficult emotions, your body can become a safe harbor, a place where you can feel grounded, even when your inner world feels turbulent. Begin to notice where you feel most at home in your body. For some people, it's the feeling of their feet on the ground. For others, it's the sensation of their back against a chair, or the feeling of their hands resting in their lap. These physical sensations can serve as anchors when emotions feel overwhelming. You can also use your body as a resource for self-soothing. This might look like wrapping your arms around yourself in a gentle self-hug, placing your hand on your heart, or even just noticing the warmth of your own skin. These simple gestures can signal to your nervous system that you're safe and cared for. Creating rituals of presence. Rituals can be powerful tools for creating space for emotional healing. They don't have to be elaborate or spiritual. They just need to be intentional actions that signal to your psyche that you're creating sacred space for your inner world. This might look like lighting a candle when you sit down to journal, making a cup of tea before you allow yourself to feel whatever wants to be felt, or taking a walk in nature when you need to process something difficult. The key is consistency and intention. When you repeatedly engage in the same ritual before holding space for your emotions, your body and mind begin to recognize these cues and naturally shift into a more receptive, healing state. The practice of self-compassion. Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It's the practice of treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a dear friend who was struggling. It involves three key elements: mindfulness, recognizing your suffering without being overwhelmed by it; common humanity, understanding that struggle is part of the human experience; and kindness, responding to yourself with care rather than criticism. When you're holding space for difficult emotions, notice the voice in your head. Is it critical and harsh, telling you that you should be over this by now, or that you're being dramatic? Or is it gentle and understanding, acknowledging that this is a difficult time and that you're doing your best? Learning to speak to yourself with compassion often requires conscious effort, especially if you're used to being self-critical. You might literally need to practice saying kind things to yourself. This is a hard time, and it's okay to feel upset. Or, I'm doing the best I can with what I know right now. The ebb and flow of emotions. As you practice holding space for your emotions, you'll begin to notice that they have their own natural rhythm. Emotions are not static states. They're more like waves that rise and fall, intensify and subside. Sometimes you might feel like you're drowning in an emotion, as if it will never pass. But if you can learn to observe emotions with curiosity rather than fear, you'll begin to notice that even the most intense feelings have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This understanding can be profoundly liberating. Instead of fearing difficult emotions, you can learn to ride them like a surfer rides waves, maintaining your balance while allowing the emotion to carry you to shore. The wisdom that emerges. When you consistently practice holding space for yourself, something remarkable happens. The emotions you once feared begin to reveal their wisdom. Anger shows you where your boundaries have been crossed. Sadness opens your heart to what matters most. Fear alerts you to what needs protection. Even shame, when held with compassion, can reveal where you've disconnected from your authentic self. This doesn't mean that difficult emotions become pleasant, but they do become workable. They transform from enemies to be defeated into messengers to be received. And in receiving these messages with presence and compassion, you begin to access an inner wisdom that no external source can provide. Chapter 4. Releasing what no longer serves you. The sacred act of letting go. Letting go is not about forgetting or pretending that something didn't happen. It's about releasing the grip that past experiences have on your present moment. It's about choosing to carry the wisdom from difficult experiences without carrying the weight of resentment, regret, or fear. Think of letting go like cleaning out a closet. You're not throwing away everything indiscriminately. You're carefully examining what still fits, what still serves you, and what you've outgrown. Some items might have sentimental value but no longer serve your current life. Others might have been useful once but are now just taking up space. The process of release is both an art and a practice. It requires discernment to know what to release and what to keep, compassion to honor what these experiences have taught you, and courage to step into the unknown space that letting go creates. The weight of blame. Blame is one of the heaviest burdens we carry, whether we're blaming others for their actions or blaming ourselves for our responses. While blame can initially feel protective, it gives us someone to hold responsible for our pain. It ultimately keeps us stuck in the past and prevents us from reclaiming our power in the present. When you blame others, you give them power over your happiness and well-being. When you blame yourself, you create internal conflict and shame that blocks your natural healing process. This doesn't mean that people shouldn't be held accountable for their actions, but rather that carrying blame is different from seeking justice or learning from experience. Releasing blame doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or pretending that everything is fine. It means acknowledging what happened, understanding its impact on you, and choosing to reclaim your energy from the endless cycle of resentment and self-recrimination. The practice of releasing blame often begins with a simple recognition. Carrying this blame is hurting me more than it's hurting anyone else. From this recognition, you can begin to explore what it would feel like to set this burden down. The complexity of guilt. Guilt is a complex emotion that can serve as both a moral compass and a prison. Healthy guilt alerts us when we've acted in ways that conflict with our values, motivating us to make amends or change our behavior. Unhealthy guilt, however, becomes a chronic state of self-punishment that serves no constructive purpose. Many people carry guilt for things that were never their fault: childhood abuse, a parent's addiction, a loved one's death, or simply for having needs and feelings. This misplaced guilt can be particularly stubborn because it often develops in childhood when we naturally assume that we're responsible for everything that happens around us. Releasing guilt requires honest examination of what you're actually responsible for. Were you really in control of the situation? Did you have the knowledge, skills, and resources to act differently? Were you a child trying to make sense of adult situations beyond your control? This process isn't about excusing harmful behavior if you did something that hurt someone. Taking responsibility and making amends is part of healing. But it is about releasing the burden of guilt that doesn't serve growth or healing. The fire of anger. Anger is often the emotion we most want to release, yet it's also one of the most important emotions to understand before letting go. Anger is information. It tells us when something is wrong, when our boundaries have been crossed, or when we've been treated unfairly. Many people, particularly those who were taught that anger is bad or dangerous, try to skip over anger and move directly to forgiveness. But unexpressed anger doesn't disappear. It often transforms into depression, anxiety, or physical illness. The healthy expression of anger doesn't mean acting out aggressively or hurting others. It means acknowledging the anger, understanding its message, and finding constructive ways to channel its energy. This might involve writing a letter you never send, talking to a trusted friend, engaging in physical exercise, or simply allowing yourself to feel the anger without judgment. Once anger has been acknowledged and expressed in healthy ways, it often transforms naturally. The fierce energy of anger can become the fuel for positive change, boundary setting, or creative expression. The practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of emotional healing. Many people believe that forgiveness means condoning harmful behavior, that it requires reconciliation, or that it's something you do for the benefit of the person who hurt you. True forgiveness is something you do for yourself. It's the decision to release the resentment and anger that are weighing you down. It's choosing to free yourself from the prison of perpetual hurt and victimhood. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. You don't have to feel loving towards someone to forgive them. You don't have to trust them again or allow them back into your life. You don't even have to tell them that you've forgiven them. Forgiveness is simply saying, I release my right to hurt you back for hurting me. I choose to use my energy for my own healing rather than for punishment or revenge. This process often takes time and may need to be repeated multiple times. You might forgive someone in your mind, but find that your heart needs more time to catch up. This is natural and doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Writing your way to freedom. Writing can be a powerful tool for release because it allows you to externalize your inner experience. When thoughts and emotions swirl around in your mind, they can feel overwhelming and confusing. Writing them down gives them form and substance, making them easier to examine and work with. Try writing letters to people who have hurt you, letters you'll never send. Let yourself say everything you need to say without censoring yourself. Express your anger, your hurt, your disappointment. Don't worry about being fair or balanced. This is your space to tell your truth. You might also write letters to yourself, to your younger self, who was doing the best they could with limited resources, to your future self, who has successfully navigated this difficult period, or to the part of yourself that's struggling right now. Another powerful practice is stream of consciousness writing, where you write continuously for a set period without stopping to edit or censor. This can help you access deeper thoughts and feelings that might be below the surface of your conscious awareness. The ceremony of release. Creating ceremonies or rituals around the process of letting go can be profoundly healing. These don't have to be elaborate or follow any particular tradition. They just need to be meaningful to you and mark the transition from holding on to letting go. You might burn the letters you've written, bury symbols of what you're releasing, or create art that represents your journey from pain to peace. Some people find it helpful to speak their release aloud, either to a trusted friend or to themselves in a mirror. The key is to create an action that symbolizes your intention to release what no longer serves you. This external action supports the internal process of letting go and can make the transformation feel more real and complete. The empty space. When you release what no longer serves you, you might initially feel a sense of emptiness or loss. This is natural and temporary. You've been carrying these emotions, beliefs, and patterns for so long that they've become part of your identity. Letting them go can feel like losing a part of yourself. This empty space is actually sacred ground. It's where new growth can occur. But it might feel uncomfortable at first, like walking into a room where familiar furniture has been removed. You might bump into the absence of what used to be there. Be patient with this phase of the process. The emptiness you feel is not a void to be filled immediately, but a space to be honored. It's the pause between the old and the new, the silence between songs, the fertile darkness before dawn. What remains? As you release what no longer serves you, you might be surprised by what remains. Beneath the anger, blame, and resentment, you might find a deep well of compassion. Beneath the fear and anxiety, you might discover a profound trust in your own resilience. Beneath the pain, you might uncover a capacity for joy that you thought was lost forever. This is your essential self, the part of you that exists beyond your wounds and conditioning. It's the part of you that has been waiting patiently for you to clear away the debris so it can shine through. The qualities that remain after release are not consolation prizes. They're the treasures that were always there, waiting to be discovered. They're the proof that you are more than your pain, more than your past, more than your struggles. They're the foundation upon which you can build a life of authenticity, joy, and deep connection. Chapter 5. Rebuilding Self. Trust. The foundation of all healing. Self-trust is the bedrock of emotional healing. It's the deep knowing that you can handle whatever life brings, that your feelings are valid, and that you have the wisdom to navigate difficult situations. When self-trust is damaged often through experiences of betrayal, criticism, or being made to doubt your own perceptions, it can feel like losing your internal compass. Rebuilding self-trust is not a quick process, but it's one of the most important investments you can make in your emotional well-being. It's like learning to walk again. After an injury, you start with small steps, gradually building confidence in your ability to move forward safely. Self-trust is not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about trusting that you'll learn from your experiences, that you'll treat yourself with kindness when you stumble, and that you have the capacity to grow and change throughout your life. Learning to trust your feelings. One of the most fundamental aspects of self-trust is learning to trust your emotional responses. Many people have been taught to doubt their feelings, told they're too sensitive, overreacting, or making things up. This can create a profound disconnection from your inner guidance system. Your feelings are not facts about the world, but they are facts about your experience. If you feel uncomfortable in a situation, that discomfort is real and valid, even if you can't immediately explain why. If you feel hurt by someone's words, that hurt is real, even if the person claims they didn't mean it that way. Learning to trust your feelings doesn't mean acting on every emotion or letting feelings dictate your behavior. It means honoring your emotional responses as valuable information about your needs, boundaries, and values. Start by practicing simple acknowledgement. I notice I'm feeling anxious about this decision, or I'm feeling sad, and that's okay. This acknowledgement doesn't require action, it simply validates your internal experience, the voice of inner wisdom. Beneath the noise of worry, self-doubt, and external expectations, there's a quiet voice that knows what's right for you. This voice might speak through bodily sensations, sudden insights, or a simple sense of rightness or wrongness about a situation. This inner wisdom is not the same as the critical voice that points out your flaws, or the anxious voice that worries about everything that could go wrong. It's a calmer, more centered voice that speaks from a place of deep knowing rather than fear. Learning to distinguish between these different internal voices is crucial for rebuilding self-trust. The critical voice often uses absolutes, "you always mess things up," and speaks in a harsh, punitive tone. The anxious voice catastrophizes and focuses on worst-case scenarios. The voice of wisdom is gentler, more nuanced, and often surprisingly simple in its guidance. To access this inner wisdom, you might need to create quiet space in your life. This could be through meditation, time in nature, journaling, or simply sitting quietly without distractions. The wisdom voice often emerges when you're not trying so hard to figure things out. Boundaries as self-care. Healthy boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that help you maintain your sense of self while staying connected to others. They're expressions of self-respect and self-care, not selfishness or cruelty. When your boundaries have been violated repeatedly, or when you've been made to feel guilty for having needs, it can be difficult to know where you end and others begin. You might find yourself saying yes when you mean no, taking on responsibilities that aren't yours, or feeling guilty for disappointing others, even when their expectations are unreasonable. Rebuilding healthy boundaries starts with recognizing that you have the right to your own thoughts, feelings, and preferences. You don't need to justify your boundaries or get permission to have them. You simply need to communicate them clearly and consistently. This might sound like, "I need some time to think about that before I give you an answer," or "I care about you, but I can't take on that responsibility right now," or "I'm not comfortable discussing that topic." Setting boundaries often brings up guilt, especially if you're used to prioritizing others' needs over your own. Remember that boundaries are not about punishing others, they're about creating conditions where you can show up as your best self in relationships. The practice of self-loyalty. Self-loyalty means keeping the promises you make to yourself. It means following through on commitments to your own well-being, even when it's inconvenient or when others don't understand. It's treating yourself with the same reliability and respect you'd show a dear friend. Many people are incredibly loyal to others while being completely unreliable to themselves. They'll move heaven and earth to help a friend but won't keep their own commitment to exercise, rest, or pursue their dreams. This pattern erodes self-trust over time. Start with small commitments to yourself. If you say you're going to go to bed at a certain time, do it. If you promise yourself you'll take a walk, follow through. If you commit to spending time on a creative project, honor that commitment. These small acts of self-loyalty build trust between you and yourself. They demonstrate that you're someone who can be counted on, starting with counting on yourself. Honoring your needs. Many people struggle with even identifying their needs, let alone meeting them. This often stems from experiences where needs were dismissed, criticized, or used against them. You might have learned that having needs makes you weak, selfish, or burdensome. The truth is that needs are not weaknesses, they're part of being human. Everyone has needs for safety, connection, autonomy, meaning, and growth. When these needs are consistently unmet, it affects every aspect of your life. Learning to honor your needs starts with recognizing what they are. This might require some detective work, especially if you've been disconnected from your needs for a long time. Pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you. Notice what activities make you feel most like yourself and what situations leave you feeling depleted. Common needs that people struggle to acknowledge include the need for solitude and quiet, the need for creative expression, the need for physical affection and touch, the need for intellectual stimulation, the need for spiritual connection, the need for play and fun, the need for recognition and appreciation. Once you identify your needs, you can begin to advocate for them. This doesn't mean demanding that others meet all your needs, but rather taking responsibility for meeting them yourself when possible and asking for support when needed. The courage to be imperfect. Perfectionism is often a strategy for avoiding criticism or rejection, but it's also a barrier to self-trust. When you demand perfection from yourself, you're essentially saying that you're only acceptable when you're flawless. This creates an impossible standard that erodes confidence and self-worth. Rebuilding self-trust requires embracing your imperfections as part of your humanity. It means trusting that you can make mistakes and still be worthy of love and respect. It means believing that your worth is not dependent on your performance. This doesn't mean lowering your standards or not caring about doing well. It means recognizing that perfectionism and excellence are different things. Excellence is about doing your best with what you have in the moment. Perfectionism is about trying to control how others perceive you. Practice self-compassion when you make mistakes. Instead of harsh self-criticism, try responding to yourself the way you'd respond to a friend who was struggling. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? And how can I learn from this experience? The relationship with your body. Your body is your most reliable ally in rebuilding self-trust. It's constantly giving you information about your environment, your needs, and your emotional state. Learning to listen to and trust your body's wisdom is crucial for overall well-being. Many people have disconnected from their bodies due to trauma, illness, or cultural messages about bodies being unreliable or shameful. Reconnecting with your body can feel vulnerable, but it's also deeply healing. Start by simply noticing your body without judgment. How does it feel to sit in your chair? What sensations do you notice in your chest, your shoulders, your stomach? Can you breathe a little deeper and feel your body respond? Your body often knows what you need before your mind does. It might tense up around certain people, relax in certain environments, or feel energized by specific activities. Learning to trust these bodily cues can guide you toward what supports your well-being and away from what depletes you. The practice of self-advocacy. Self-advocacy is the ability to speak up for yourself, ask for what you need, and protect your well-being. It's not about being aggressive or demanding, it's about clearly and respectfully communicating your needs and boundaries. Many people struggle with self-advocacy because they fear conflict, rejection, or being seen as difficult. But self-advocacy is actually a gift to both yourself and others. When you clearly communicate your needs and boundaries, you make it easier for others to be in relationship with you. Self-advocacy might look like asking for clarification when you don't understand something, requesting support when you're overwhelmed, saying no to requests that don't align with your values or capacity, speaking up when something doesn't feel right, asking for accommodations when you need them. The more you practice self-advocacy, the more natural it becomes. Start with low-stakes situations and gradually work your way up to more challenging conversations. Creating your own approval. One of the most profound shifts in rebuilding self-trust is learning to create your own approval rather than constantly seeking it from others. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others' opinions, but rather developing an internal sense of worth that doesn't depend on external validation. This shift often requires examining the beliefs you have about approval and acceptance. Do you believe you need to earn love through achievement? Do you think you have to be perfect to be worthy of respect? Do you fear that if you're not constantly pleasing others, you'll be abandoned? These beliefs, while understandable, can keep you trapped in cycles of people-pleasing and self-abandonment. Creating your own approval means recognizing that your worth is inherent, not earned. It means celebrating your efforts, not just your outcomes. It means being proud of your courage to be authentic, even when it's difficult. Practice giving yourself the recognition and appreciation you seek from others. Acknowledge your efforts, celebrate your progress, and offer yourself the encouragement you wish you received more of from the world. The emerging self. As you rebuild self-trust, you might notice that you're becoming someone slightly different than who you were before. This emerging self is not a new persona, it's the person you've always been underneath the layers of protection, adaptation, and conditioning. This emerging self might have different preferences, boundaries, or dreams than the person you thought you were. You might discover interests you didn't know you had, or find that relationships that once felt essential no longer serve you. This transformation can be both exciting and unsettling. You might feel more authentic, but also more vulnerable. You might feel more powerful, but also more responsible for your choices. This is the natural result of living from a place of self-trust rather than self-doubt. Chapter 6. Creating Emotional Resilience. Beyond surviving to thriving. Emotional resilience is not about becoming invulnerable to life's challenges. It's about developing the capacity to bend without breaking, to be deeply affected by life while maintaining your center, and to transform difficult experiences into wisdom and strength. Many people misunderstand resilience as the ability to bounce back quickly from adversity, but true resilience is more nuanced. It's the ability to stay present with difficulty, to maintain hope in dark times, and to continue growing even when life feels overwhelming. Resilience is not a fixed trait that you either have or don't have. It's a set of skills and perspectives that can be developed throughout your life. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to strengthen your resilience muscles, to learn more about your own capacity for healing and growth. The difference between reacting and responding. One of the foundations of emotional resilience is learning the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic, immediate, and often driven by old patterns and wounds. Responding is conscious, considered, and aligned with your values and intentions. When you react, you're often operating from a place of fear, anger, or hurt. Your response is likely to be defensive, impulsive, or disproportionate to the situation. When you respond, you're operating from a place of wisdom, compassion, and clarity. The space between stimulus and response is where your power lies. In that space, you can choose how to engage with whatever is happening. You can ask yourself, what does this situation need from me? How can I respond in a way that aligns with who I want to be? This doesn't mean you never feel triggered or upset. It means you learn to pause, breathe, and choose your response rather than being controlled by your automatic reactions. This skill develops with practice and becomes one of your greatest assets in navigating life's challenges. Building your emotional vocabulary. Emotional resilience is enhanced by having a rich vocabulary for your inner experience. When you can accurately name what you're feeling, you're better able to understand what you need and how to respond effectively. Many people operate with a limited emotional vocabulary, defaulting to words like good, bad, fine, or stressed. But emotions are much more nuanced than this. The difference between feeling disappointed and feeling devastated, between being concerned and being anxious, between being irritated and being furious, these distinctions matter because they point to different needs and call for different responses. Start paying attention to the subtle variations in your emotional experience. Are you feeling melancholy or heartbroken, excited or anxious, grateful or relieved? The more precisely you can identify your emotions, the more skillfully you can work with them. Consider creating an emotion wheel or list that you can reference when you're struggling to name what you're feeling. This practice of emotional naming can help you feel more in control of your inner experience and less overwhelmed by unnamed feelings. The practice of emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is not about controlling or suppressing your emotions. It's about learning to be with intense emotions without being overwhelmed by them. It's the ability to feel deeply while maintaining your capacity to think clearly and act wisely. This practice involves several key skills. Distress tolerance, the ability to sit with uncomfortable emotions without immediately trying to escape or fix them. This might involve breathing practices, grounding techniques, or simply reminding yourself that feelings are temporary. Emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between different emotions and understand their specific messages. This helps you respond more appropriately to what you're actually feeling. Cognitive flexibility, the ability to consider multiple perspectives and possibilities rather than getting stuck in rigid thinking patterns. This helps you see situations more clearly and respond more creatively. Self-soothing, the ability to comfort yourself when you're distressed. This might involve physical comfort, like a warm bath or gentle touch, emotional comfort, like kind self-talk or calling a friend, or spiritual comfort, like prayer or meditation. The role of meaning-making. Humans are meaning-making creatures. We naturally try to understand why things happen and what our experiences mean. This tendency can either support our resilience or undermine it, depending on the kinds of meanings we create. Resilient people tend to create meanings that support their growth and well-being. They might see challenges as opportunities to learn, setbacks as temporary rather than permanent, and difficulties as specific rather than global. They look for ways that their struggles might serve a larger purpose or contribute to their character development. This doesn't mean being unrealistically positive or denying real pain. It means choosing interpretations that support your ability to move forward, rather than those that keep you stuck in victimhood or despair. For example, instead of "this always happens to me," which suggests a permanent, pervasive problem, you might think, "This is a difficult situation that I'm learning to navigate," which suggests a specific, temporary challenge that you have agency in addressing. The wisdom of asking for help. One of the strongest predictors of resilience is the ability to ask for and accept help when you need it. Contrary to popular belief, needing help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom and self-awareness. Many people struggle with asking for help because they've been taught to be self-reliant, or because they fear being judged, rejected, or becoming a burden. But humans are inherently social beings, and we're designed to support each other through difficult times. Asking for help requires vulnerability, but it also builds connection and resilience. When you share your struggles with trusted others, you often discover that you're not alone in your experience. You might receive practical support, emotional comfort, or simply the relief of being seen and understood. Consider the different types of help you might need: emotional support, practical assistance, advice, or simply someone to listen. Different people in your life might be better suited to provide different types of help. Building a network of support means identifying who you can turn to for what kinds of assistance. The art of perspective taking. Resilience is enhanced by the ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, especially during difficult times. When you're in the middle of a challenging situation, it can feel like it will last forever and that it defines your entire reality. But developing the ability to shift perspectives can provide relief and clarity. This might involve temporal perspective, reminding yourself that this too shall pass. Difficult times are temporary, even when they don't feel that way. You can ask yourself, how will I view this situation in a year, in 5 years? Spatial perspective. Zooming out to see your situation in the context of the larger world. This isn't about minimizing your experience, but about gaining perspective on its relative significance. Developmental perspective. Seeing challenges as opportunities for growth and learning. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you might ask, "What is this teaching me?" Or, "How might this experience contribute to my development?" Narrative perspective. Considering how this difficult chapter fits into the larger story of your life. You are not just your current struggle. You are a complex person with a rich history and an unwritten future. The practice of gratitude. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is fine or ignoring real problems. It's about training your attention to notice what's working in your life alongside what's challenging. It's about developing the capacity to hold both joy and sorrow, appreciation and disappointment, hope and grief. Research shows that regular gratitude practice can improve mental health, increase resilience, and enhance overall well-being. But gratitude practices are most effective when they're specific, personal, and genuine rather than generic or forced. Instead of writing, "I'm grateful for my health," you might write, "I'm grateful that my body carried me through a difficult day today," or "I'm grateful for the way the sun felt on my skin during my morning walk." Gratitude can be particularly powerful during difficult times because it helps balance your perspective. When you're struggling, your mind naturally focuses on what's wrong. Gratitude practice doesn't deny these difficulties, it simply ensures that you're also noticing what's going well. The strength in vulnerability. True resilience includes the courage to be vulnerable, to admit when you're struggling, to show your emotions, and to let others see you as you truly are. This might seem counterintuitive, but vulnerability is actually a source of strength, not weakness. When you try to appear strong all the time, you cut yourself off from the very connections and support that could help you through difficult times. You also exhaust yourself trying to maintain a facade that doesn't reflect your real experience. Vulnerability allows for authentic connection, which is one of the most powerful sources of resilience. When you let others see your struggles, you give them permission to be real about their own challenges. You create space for mutual support and understanding. This doesn't mean oversharing or being vulnerable with everyone. It means being selective about when and with whom you share your authentic self, and having the courage to show up honestly in those relationships. Building your resilience toolkit. Emotional resilience is supported by having a variety of tools and strategies you can use when life becomes challenging. These tools might include mindfulness practices, techniques for staying present and grounded when emotions are intense, physical practices, exercise, yoga, or other movement that helps regulate your nervous system, creative practices, art, music, writing, or other forms of expression that help process emotions, social practices, connections with friends, family, or community that provide support and perspective, spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, or other practices that connect you to something larger than yourself, cognitive practices, journaling, therapy, or other ways of examining and reframing your thoughts. The key is to develop these tools before you desperately need them. Just as you wouldn't wait until you're drowning to learn how to swim, it's important to practice resilience skills during calmer times so they're available when life becomes difficult. The seasons of resilience. Resilience doesn't look the same all the time. Just as nature has seasons, your emotional life has seasons too. Sometimes you're in a spring season of growth and possibility. Other times, you're in a winter season of rest and reflection. Understanding this seasonal nature of resilience can help you be more patient with yourself during difficult times. You don't have to be bouncing back at every moment. Sometimes, resilience looks like enduring with grace, resting deeply, or simply putting one foot in front of the other. During your winter seasons, your job is not to force spring to come early. It's to tend to yourself with the same care you'd give a plant during its dormant period, providing just enough nourishment to sustain life, while allowing the deeper work of healing to occur underground. Chapter 7. Moving forward with compassion. The integration of healing. Healing is not a destination you arrive at. It's a way of being that you cultivate throughout your life. As you move forward on your journey, you'll find that the skills and insights you've developed become woven into the fabric of who you are, informing how you respond to new challenges and opportunities. The process of integration means taking the awareness, tools, and wisdom you've gained and applying them to your daily life. It means recognizing that healing is not about becoming perfect or immune to pain, but about developing a more compassionate and skillful relationship with your human experience. You might notice that situations that once triggered intense reactions now feel more manageable. Relationships that once felt overwhelming now have more space and ease. Decisions that once felt impossible now seem clearer because you've learned to trust your inner wisdom. This integration is not always linear. You might find yourself revisiting old patterns or feeling triggered by familiar situations. This is not a sign of failure. It's a natural part of the healing process. Each time you encounter an old trigger with new awareness, you have the opportunity to deepen your healing. Living with an open heart. One of the most profound outcomes of emotional healing is the ability to live with an open heart even after being hurt. This doesn't mean being naive or unprotected. It means maintaining your capacity for love, joy, and connection despite having experienced pain. An open heart is not the same as an unguarded heart. You can be open while still maintaining healthy boundaries. You can be vulnerable while still being discerning about whom you trust. You can love deeply while still honoring your own needs and well-being. Living with an open heart requires courage because it means accepting that you might be hurt again. But it also means accepting that you might experience profound joy, deep connection, and beautiful surprises. When you close your heart to protect yourself from pain, you also close it to the full spectrum of human experience. The open heart is resilient, not because it's invulnerable, but because it knows how to heal. It trusts in its capacity to feel deeply, to be wounded, and to recover. It understands that love is worth the risk of loss, that connection is worth the possibility of disappointment, and that growth is worth the discomfort of change. The art of healthy relationships. As you heal, your relationships will inevitably change. Some relationships that once felt essential might no longer serve you. Others that felt challenging might become sources of growth and connection. You might find yourself attracting different types of people or engaging with familiar people in new ways. Healthy relationships are characterized by mutual respect, open communication, and the ability to be authentic with each other. They include space for both people to grow and change, support for each other's individual journeys, and the capacity to work through conflicts constructively. In healthy relationships, you don't have to hide parts of yourself or pretend to be someone you're not. You can share your struggles without fear of judgment or abandonment. You can celebrate your successes without fear of envy or minimization. You can disagree without fear of retaliation or withdrawal. This doesn't mean that healthy relationships are always easy or comfortable. Growth often requires discomfort, and authentic connection sometimes involves difficult conversations. But in healthy relationships, these challenges are met with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with compassion rather than criticism. The wisdom of boundaries. As you continue to heal, you'll likely find that your boundaries become clearer and more consistent. You'll know more quickly when something doesn't feel right, and you'll have more confidence in honoring your needs and limits. Boundaries are not just about saying no, they're also about saying yes to what truly aligns with your values and well-being. They're about creating a life that feels authentic and sustainable, rather than one that looks good from the outside but feels empty within. Healthy boundaries are flexible rather than rigid. They can adapt to different situations and relationships while maintaining their essential function of protecting your energy and well-being. They're also communicated clearly and kindly, rather than through passive-aggressive behavior or explosive reactions. As you practice setting and maintaining boundaries, you might notice that some people respond with support and understanding, while others become resistant or critical. This feedback can be valuable information about the health of your relationships and whether they're able to support your growth. The practice of self-compassion. Self-compassion remains one of the most important practices as you move forward in your healing journey. There will be days when you feel like you're backsliding, when old patterns resurface, or when you make choices that don't align with your values. Self-compassion is what allows you to learn from these experiences without being crushed by them. Self-compassion involves three key elements: mindfulness, acknowledging your suffering without being overwhelmed by it; common humanity, recognizing that struggle is part of the human experience; and kindness, treating yourself with the same care you'd show a dear friend. This practice becomes particularly important when you're facing new challenges or transitions. Change can be uncomfortable even when it's positive, and self-compassion helps you navigate uncertainty with greater ease and confidence. Remember that self-compassion is not self-indulgence or self-pity. It's a clear-eyed recognition of your humanity, combined with a commitment to treating yourself with kindness and respect. It's what allows you to take responsibility for your choices without drowning in shame or self-criticism. The gifts of your journey. As you look back on your healing journey, you might be surprised by the gifts that have emerged from your struggles. Experiences that once felt purely destructive might now be sources of wisdom, compassion, and strength. Pain that once seemed meaningless might now have contributed to your capacity to help others or to appreciate life's beauty. This doesn't mean that your suffering was necessary or that you should be grateful for traumatic experiences. It means that you have the remarkable human capacity to transform pain into wisdom, isolation into connection, and confusion into clarity. The gifts of your journey are not consolation prizes for your pain. They're expressions of your own resilience and creativity. They're evidence of your capacity to grow, to heal, and to create meaning from difficult experiences. These gifts might include a deeper capacity for empathy and compassion, greater appreciation for simple pleasures and moments of joy, increased authenticity and self-awareness, stronger, more honest relationships, a clearer sense of your values and priorities, enhanced emotional intelligence and regulation skills, greater resilience in the face of future challenges, sharing your story. As you heal, you might find yourself wanting to share your story with others, not from a place of seeking sympathy or validation, but from a desire to offer hope and connection to others who are struggling. Your story has the power to normalize the human experience of pain and healing, to offer practical wisdom, and to create bridges of understanding between people. Sharing your story is not about oversharing or making your private struggles public. It's about offering your experience as a gift to others while maintaining appropriate boundaries and self-care. It's about speaking your truth in ways that serve both your own healing and the healing of others. This sharing might take many forms: writing, speaking, creative expression, mentoring, or simply being present with others in their struggles. The key is to share from a place of stability and wisdom, rather than from unhealed wounds or a need for attention. When you share your story, you help break down the isolation that often accompanies emotional pain. You offer others the gift of knowing they're not alone in their struggles. You provide hope that healing is possible and that pain can be transformed into purpose. The ongoing journey. Healing is not a project to be completed. It's a way of life to be embraced. As you continue to grow and change, you'll encounter new challenges, opportunities, and transitions. Each of these experiences is an opportunity to apply the wisdom you've gained and to deepen your capacity for resilience and compassion. The tools and insights you've developed are not just for crisis times, they're for everyday life. They help you navigate small disappointments with greater grace, appreciate simple pleasures more fully, and maintain your sense of self in the face of external pressures. You might find that your definition of success changes as you heal. Instead of measuring your worth by external achievements or others' approval, you might find yourself valuing authenticity, connection, and inner peace. Instead of striving for perfection, you might embrace the beauty of being fully human. This ongoing journey includes cycles of expansion and contraction, times of great clarity and periods of confusion, moments of profound joy and experiences of deep sorrow. All of these are part of the rich tapestry of human experience, and your healing allows you to meet each with greater presence and wisdom. The ripple effect. Your healing doesn't just benefit you, it creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual experience. When you heal, you become available for deeper, more authentic relationships. When you practice self-compassion, you model that possibility for others. When you set healthy boundaries, you give others permission to do the same. Children in your life benefit from seeing an adult who takes responsibility for their emotional well-being. Friends and family members benefit from your increased capacity for presence and empathy. Even strangers might be touched by the authenticity and kindness that flows from your healing work. This ripple effect is not a burden or responsibility you need to carry. It's a natural consequence of living with greater awareness and compassion. You don't have to try to help others heal. Your own healing naturally contributes to the healing of the world. A blessing for the path ahead. As you continue forward on your journey, carry with you the knowledge that you have everything you need to handle whatever comes your way. You have survived difficult times before. You have the capacity to learn, grow, and adapt. You have the wisdom to seek help when you need it, and the strength to offer support to others. Trust in your own resilience. Trust in your capacity for joy. Trust in your ability to create a life that feels authentic and meaningful. Trust in the healing that continues to unfold within you, even when you can't see it directly. Remember that healing is not about becoming someone new, it's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about removing the barriers that have kept you separate from your own heart and allowing your true nature to shine through. You are not broken. You never were. You are a human being on a journey of growth and discovery, and every step of that journey has meaning and value. The pain you've experienced, the healing you've undertaken, the wisdom you've gained, all of these are part of your unique gift to the world. May you walk forward with compassion for yourself and others. May you trust in your own wisdom and strength. May you remain open to the beauty and mystery of life. And may you always remember that you are worthy of love, belonging, and joy, not because of what you've accomplished or overcome, but simply because you exist. The path of healing is not always easy, but it is always worthwhile. And you, dear one, are walking it with grace, courage, and an open heart. That is enough. You are enough. You have always been enough. Conclusion: coming home to yourself. As we reach the end of our journey together through these pages, take a moment to breathe and acknowledge where you are now. You've shown up for yourself in ways that matter. You've been willing to look at difficult things, to feel uncomfortable emotions, and to question patterns that may have been with you for years. This is no small thing. In a world that often encourages us to numb out, speed up, or push through, you've chosen to slow down and turn toward your inner world with curiosity and compassion. You've chosen healing over hiding, growth over comfort, authenticity over approval. The path of emotional healing is not a linear journey from broken to fixed. It's a spiral path that leads you home to yourself, to your own wisdom, your own strength, your own capacity for love and joy. Sometimes you'll feel like you're circling back to familiar territory, but each time you return, you bring more awareness, more tools, and more compassion. You may have started this journey hoping to feel better, to hurt less, or to find some magical solution that would make difficult emotions disappear forever. While these hopes are understandable, what you've discovered is something even more valuable. You've learned to be with yourself in a new way. You've developed a relationship with your own heart that is characterized by kindness rather than criticism, curiosity rather than judgment, and presence rather than avoidance. The tools and insights you've gained are not just for the difficult times, they're for all of life. They help you savor joy more fully, navigate challenges more skillfully, and connect with others more authentically. They turn you into someone who can be trusted with your own heart and, by extension, with the hearts of others. Remember that healing is not a destination but a way of traveling. There will be days when you feel like you've forgotten everything you've learned, when old patterns resurface, or when life feels overwhelming again. This is not failure, it's humanness. The measure of your healing is not the absence of difficulty, but your capacity to meet difficulty with presence, wisdom, and self-compassion. You now know that your emotions are not enemies to be defeated, but messengers to be received. You understand that your sensitivity is not a weakness, but a gift. You recognize that your struggles have not diminished you, but have contributed to your depth, your empathy, and your wisdom. As you close this book and return to your daily life, carry with you the knowledge that you have everything you need to handle whatever comes your way. You have your breath as an anchor, your body as a sanctuary, your emotions as guides, and your heart as a home you can always return to. The world needs what you have to offer: your unique perspective, your hard-won wisdom, your capacity for compassion, and your authentic self. The healing you've done is not just for you. It's your contribution to the healing of the world. Trust yourself. Trust your journey. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be, and that you have everything you need to take the next step. The path ahead is unwritten, full of possibility, and waiting for you to walk it with the courage, compassion, and wisdom you've cultivated. You are home now. You are whole. You are enough. Welcome back to yourself.